Most of the conversations we have are usually centered around the technical aspects of the power industry. Technical expertise is definitely a vital part of the equation, but what about navigating the complexities associated with finding a job and getting hired? Sure, I could cover our processes of reverse engineering job searches, networking, and so on, but I would rather leverage the power of community and experience. And who better than someone I consider to be a friend, recruitment agency owner, and podcast host of the Elite Recruiter podcast, Benjamin Mena. Ben has a laundry list. Ben has interviewed a laundry list of the most seasoned and successful recruiters on the planet, many of which have billed in excess of $1 million annually. And he has also been a valuable source of education and mentorship as we continue to iterate and adapt to the changing landscape that is recruitment. Ben started his career in recruitment back in 2006 with Aerotech, which is one of the largest talent agencies in the US, as a technical recruiter. After his tenure at Aerotech, Ben furthered his recruiting career with roles at military industrial heavyweights, including Lockheed Martin, L3, BAE, DynCorp, and also did corporate recruiting for the US Postal Service before venturing out on his own and starting Select Source Solutions with his wife in 2017, primarily serving the government contracting or GovCon space. Ben, I know you are a very busy man, especially having welcomed baby Gabe into the world this year. So thanks for managing to squeeze in an interview with me. Can you tell our audience a bit more about yourself?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I might use that bio moving forward for myself since you did such a good job with that. Being a recruiter, you're great at selling your candidates, you're great at selling the company and all these things, but then you go back to selling yourself and you're like, wait, what did I do? What did I do again? But yeah, no, we primarily focus in the government contracting space. Pretty much almost my entire career has been GovCon, whether it's the agency recruiting, internal recruiting, back to agency recruiting again. So we've really seen the gamut. We've the combination between the two probably have hired somewhere north of 1,200 people, all across the globe. Wherever the government works, I have hired people for.
I love it. Absolutely. And I think it's very, very cool because a lot of the audience that we have, and it's more of a pro bono project for us, like coming and live that veteran life and just had to run the gamut of trying to find a job when you're getting out. I'm hoping this is, and that was one of the primary drivers for wanting to have you on, is like just to be able to share that and having that GovCon experience to pass on as well, because a lot of the guys that we associate with and help out are oftentimes driven to that GovCon space as well. So awesome story.
I love the ATAP offices and offices like that, but sometimes you got to throw what they're teaching you out the door, and you got to learn what the recruiters are actually doing, whether it's the internal recruiters at the large companies that you're trying to work for or the agency recruiters that have the relationships. Completely different thing with their coaching.
Absolutely. No, and it's funny you mentioned that because like a lot of people, and that's one a lot of people I just don't think they understand that dynamic of differences between agency recruiters and the fact that we are very selective. We only submit a handful, and then and that's one of the big benefits of talking with an agency. You can leverage our relationships. And a lot of people don't realize, like with internal folks, like they're reviewing hundreds, if not thousands of resumes, like on a weekly basis, and just can't give you that level of attention, if that makes sense.
This will blow your mind, and I don't want to name the company, but because I'm still salty about it. But it was a very large government contractor. Somehow during a reorg, I had 325 positions I was in charge of.
What? That is
325. Insane. Like I was working from like 7 o'clock in the morning to literally about 11 o'clock at night every single night. So like when you talk about like the candidate, the quality in this, trust me, during that time, I could not review every resume. I had positions that had over 1,000 applicants, and it was 1 out of 325 openings. So when we'll get in this farther in the podcast, but you got to find ways to set yourself apart. And you got to find ways to set up your own career, not just clicking the applying and praying.
I call it spray and pray. Exactly. And I do talk about that through outreach and I think a lot of the veteran population, like we just haven't been exposed prior to. I lived that. I was in the Navy for 23 years. Get out, think I understand it. I'd even done tours as a recruiter for the Navy and director of operations. You would think I'd have some sense of like an idea. It doesn't occur. And I can't fault the TAP classes by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they're given, a curriculum to follow. kind of putting it out there, and we actually go and teach some of the reverse engineering of networking and trying to figure out, find somebody that works in your space and does this and build relationships that way to kind of further that and leverage the damn agency recruiters. You know what I mean?
If you want a good laugh, so my dad is, he's a retired bubblehead. So I'm a son of a bubblehead.
Love it.
He actually got a job, out. So like he was working for a government contractor. They laid him off during crazy thing about contract. Yeah. Contract changeovers. That's a whole other story. We could talk about that too. But then he got a government job doing like career help. And like, he never had experience like really doing like career stuff or recruiting before that. So I'm sitting there like doing some coaching, like this is how the world works. So that way he can like sit down and coach like everybody that he was working with. So like, and most people don't have like, hey, my son is an experienced recruiter to be able to fall back on. So, they're doing the best they can with the information that they have. Huge kudos, but like you got to like start searching out information, how to help and leverage your own career.
Absolutely. And it is a selfish endeavor. I mean, us, we get the opportunity to help so many freaking people, but like a lot of people, and I think that has a lot to do with military service as well. Like it's a selfless act. You join to defend your country. You do all these things. We are loyal beyond comprehension for most folks that haven't served. Like it's just part of the organization. The culture is built into what we do. And just having somebody in that, and again, thank you for joining, because I think that's so imperative that people understand that it's more of a selfish endeavor post-military. You're not buying into, I mean, you want culture fit and all that, but it's hard to find that relationship beyond, something that's more deeply ingrained in the conscious as serving your country. It's not like, hey, I'm going to go serve Apple, you know what I mean, or something along those lines. And even and it's funny, I have an interview coming up with my old commanding officer from Navy Recruiting District Houston, and another veteran that just kind of had to have those aha moments and understanding like it's not like service. Like you need to stay in your lane when you get out and focus there. And if you go out and try to repair something that you see wrong, because we're taught to fix it, you know what I mean? If you see something, say something, fix it. And if you do that, now you're stepping on somebody else's toes in the outside world. So that could come back and bite you in the butt via HR or something like that. You know what I mean? So that's another dynamic that we're just not used to, I guess, coming from the military. Is that kind of something you see or align with?
I mean, first of all, if you've served our country, thank you so much. You guys are the backbone of us being able to do anything that we need to / want to do. So like huge thank you for that. Secondly, like back to your question, like, man, it's a completely different world. Like, I personally have not experienced the inner military life. I've been around the military now pretty much all 40 years of my life, but it is such a wake-up call and it's such a difference when you get out. Like, you're told to fix things. You're told to solve problems. You're sometimes stuck in your own lane outside. Sometimes you're also like, need to actually expand your lane.
Right.
Like you need to jump in and like, it all depends on the company that you land. If you work for a big Fortune, a big, the Beltway boys, the big government contractors, there's a lot of staying in your own lane. But if you work for like a smaller GovCon organization that's actively growing, like in the small business phase, on the way to bigger business, you can actually do a lot more there and wear a lot more hats and grow your career quicker sometimes. So, but yeah, it all depends on where you land and like how you can design your career after the military.
Absolutely. And I think that's a wonderful caveat to make as well. It's like if you get, and personally, we like the smaller companies. I like the, the guy that's really out there trying to build this business and bootstrap and get after it, and all that. And then you do see some of those more siloed roles with, like you said, the Fortune 5s and things like that, or some of the larger companies. What size company do you think that kind of falls into, or where would you put them in the growth stage to kind of find where you could wear those multiple hats?
I would say like, easily the 0 to 100 is like the easiest. That's like, we're talking about government contracts. So the 0 to 100, they've got a few government contracts. You can like, they're probably partnered with a large prime. So they have a guaranteed work share. You hop in there. All those like smaller 1 to 100 companies, of course they want the proverbial butt in the seat on the government contract, because that's the way the world works. And government contracts is just a super complex staffing industry. And like, I just have to say that. But those are also the organizations where you can actually raise your head like, hey, I'm doing this during the day. Is there anything that you guys can need some help with at night, whether it's like some, working with an RFP, working with a proposal, and you can really expand your career by jumping in and volunteering to help at those things and those processes. It is mind blowing where your career can go with some of that early stage experience that you like a Lockheed Martin or, L3. They're like, no, we got like 45 proposal people over in this corner.
Right.
We have like, HR over in this corner. We have, there's a lot you can do. And there are tons of places you can grow in a bigger company. So like if you are at a bigger company listening to this, like still raise your hand, still find places to grow, still find ways to design your career. I've just seen like you can wear a lot more hats and grow quicker at some of those smaller organizations.
And I concur with that assessment wholeheartedly. That's kind of my feel for it as well. Is like you just have they're a smaller, startup or something like that. They're going to be, trying to minimize overhead as much as possible, which means they're probably not building out a large organization team where you have backups and things like that. So now you can really ingrain and make your mark there, especially if you're wanting to kind of, stay somewhere. A lot of us get out of the military. I did 23 years Navy, and like I would want to stay somewhere if I was doing it because a lot of that loyalty carries over. And the more you can shine and do that, I call them entrepreneurs. You can be an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, but you can definitely build up from that level. So wholeheartedly agree with that.
It's all depends on what you want to do with your career too. Like, you have what's given to you, and then you have like the options to work on designing your career.
Absolutely. Now, as mentioned in the introduction, you've interviewed countless top billers, recruitment gurus during your time on the Elite Recruiter podcast. Have you had any like aha moments? Like I've already felt like I've had a couple now along the way because, it's like, all right, Ben sees it through a similar lens in that. But with the number of individuals that you've interviewed, what are some of the aha moments you've taken away?
I think some of the biggest like aha moments is one, how many different things that you can do in the recruiting industry to, make money for your business or for your family. But there's just, typically a lot of people when they look at recruiting, it's like this is recruiting this one little thing. No, there's like 1,000 different ways that you can work your business and build your business. So that was like one of the biggest aha moments. Secondly, there's a lot of people out there that are really just working hard, like working, grinding 90 hours. And then there's a lot of people out there that are working smart and working hard. And it's trying to figure out what you like, learn what you don't know. Because if you don't know, you don't know. Learn what you don't know and find a way to leverage that information so you're working smarter, more efficiently, and also exponentially.
I like that. Now, what are some of those things that come to mind to you for working smarter and more efficiently?
It's a combination of like, using AI. Like sometimes it's using AI to be more efficient. Sometimes it's using some automations to be more efficient. Also, this is like got an interview coming out next week. It should be, long after this is posted, but actually slowing down to speed up like the hiring process, like going deeper in the relationships. Like, the podcast going live next week, the recruiter has made $1.6 million in placement fees.
Wow.
On
Solo
just
biller?
one. Yeah. So like, he owned a firm, but like he for listen to this, from one candidate.
What? How?
He goes very deep in the conversations and deep in the relationships that every time that person wanted to make a move, he was that go-to person. He was the only person that he would call this recruiter, and that's it. He didn't want to work with anybody else. And so he literally just like worked him throughout his entire career.
Really? That is wild. That is definitely wild.
This is like literally over a span of like 20, 22 years, but like because he slowed down to go deeper in the relationships, he has that relationship and he's been financially benefited from that. So it's one of those things like, kind of like taking this back to the job seeking side, you're sitting there working, whatever industry that you're working in, the power industry, the GovCon industry, like whatever your specialty within GovCon, get to know all the players and spend time with them. Like like whatever person that you're networking with now and the relationships that you're building on like a platform like LinkedIn, like don't think of just like this, just for this job. Like I'm looking for a job right now. I just need to network with this person. Look at what you're trying to set up for the next 20 years.
Yes. Well, and that brings up an interesting point from the agency perspective. And I definitely want to kind of get your insights on this one. And as a junior recruiter or agency owner in the space, so I am very, very vehemently opposed to, like, if I place somebody at a company and they're open to work or something like that. What's your, like, from a moral, it's more of a moral conundrum for me. Like, I have a loyalty to both parties, obviously,
Well,
the companies I represent and the individuals. What's your take on placing them from somebody you place them at?
Well, and also, first of all, like he also highlighted, like, if you have an agreement in place and you've like had made placements there recently, like you like legally you can't pull, like,
Right.
like you're get ready for a lawsuit.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Get ready to give your the placement feedback or whatever. So like
Yeah.
don't go stealing from like the places that you've placed people.
Absolutely.
But if it's been years and you haven't done anything with them in years, like honestly, that's a bit more fair.
Yeah,
But
I could see that being the case. And like I said, it's just one of those things because, like, if I represent a company, like for me personally, I just don't want to go and touch anybody from that company. Like, even if I don't know that candidate, I'm still not going to go and try to steal them away just because morally for me, it just doesn't feel like the right thing to do. So I was kind of looking at that, but I see what you're saying.
I mean,
Yeah.
if like you're like recruiting is a relationship business.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're sitting there like yanking around and trying to like pull people from the company that you just placed, or the second like you hit like the guarantee mark and you're trying to pull somebody, it ruins the relationship.
Absolutely.
Now, what,
And I would say a lot, and you're going to get a reputation for being that, and especially in a small niche, market. Power, like, we do a lot in the NITA world, and there's only 20,000 of these techs in about 140 companies. Like, if I go to pick up a NITA 3, and place them somewhere, I'm going to do my due diligence, and chances are I know someone where they worked, and I'm picking up the phone, and it's like, no, this guy, I wouldn't hire him if you paid me. It's like, oh, well, all right, now I know, and I think that, I mean, the reciprocal side of that agency as well, and kind of doing that stuff, you'll be known as a bad player, just based on that. So, that was kind of my take. And like, I have, like you said, relationships are huge. So I have a handful of folks that'll gladly send me people, be it Army Prime Power Bubbas or something like that. And I'm like, hey, I would love to help X, Y, and Z, but like I represent that company. I can't do that. It's
and,
you know what I mean?
The best part is like when you say that, like you also gain more respect.
I think so. I agree with that.
Like that's a great way to like, it's the recruiting business is also a business of respect too. So like, you turning down like, hey, I can't help that person. Maybe send them to here or send them there. Or like, here's my guidebook on like job searching, but I can't because of the relationships I have. I have to respect the relationships. And normally, the second you say that, people are just like, oh, cool, I get it. Yeah, right. I get it.
And like you said, that's one of the things I can do. I can't represent you, but I try to be as tied in and attuned with the other recruiting agencies. And like, I can't touch you. I wouldn't do it, but this gentleman may be able to help you, and I'm not looking for splits on any of that. That's just, to me, that's the right thing to do, to try to help somebody and leave it at that. You know what I mean? And not go any further with it. So that's the way we rock and roll with it. And it sounds like we're kind of aligned from that aspect of things. And I just try to keep it above board and do right by people. And I think karma comes around and does what it does in the end,
Yep.
So that's pretty much that kind of captured the aha moments for you. As far as that goes, you got any other ones?
I would say those are the biggest ones. It's, my mind is really just like what started off as just having fun, sharing some stories of peers in the space has really just turned into like every single time I hop on a podcast interview with somebody, it's a learning experience for me.
Love that.
I'm just like kind of like you can kind of see like if you watch the YouTube videos now, I'm sitting there like I have a pen and paper. I'm sitting there taking notes in the middle of the interview.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I'm just, and it's really just like I'm really curious. Like okay, we talk about the business stuff, we talk about the recruiting stuff, but then I towards the end of my podcast, I really want to know about you. Like what's driving you? Like what's like why are you winning, or why are you doing this? Like what spurred you? And like my God, there's a podcast coming out in like 2 weeks where the guy was homeless for a decade.
Wow.
Like eating on the streets, garbage dumpsters, and then he found the recruiting industry. Like, he got his life a little bit on set. And then found the recruiting industry, and really his life just completely changed around. So like those are the stories that I just get so excited. One, maybe motivational. Two, like, my God, my life isn't that bad.
No, right? Some
Three,
reflection and perspective.
he's got a firm that just in 18 months is now I think 18 recruiters. So you just it's a great place to learn and share. And, that's kind of where the podcast is going. And one day maybe I need to figure out what I'm going to do with it when I grow up.
No, I kind of feel you on that one. Like I said, this thing just grew. I had zero intention of making a podcast. I was like, but I definitely enjoy, the curiosity around the power industry and all that. And it was kind of a big, coming around full circle thing for me. Like I did electrical power technology engineering, and that was the line of study, and was an electronics technician via fire control. So we were electronics technicians that blow shit up, basically, is what we call it. And but it was like one of those, and then I got out, didn't want to touch it. But it's really cool to see it come full circle and now be, just having a genuine curiosity about electrical work and field service work and the power industry, and kind of like it's been an iterative process for me to kind of understand, like, this is what is kind of driving you. And it sounds like recruitment is very much that for you, and you just always want to learn. And that's the other thing too, is continuous learning just throughout. And that's why I lean heavily on yours. I know you just did the interview with Mark Whitby as well. I enjoy the heck out of his recruitment podcast. And you guys are doing just phenomenal things and spreading that knowledge and awareness.
See, Whitby's doing something with this podcast. I got to figure out what I'm doing with mine.
No, brother, you're being humble there. You are definitely doing just phenomenal stuff. I always figure out something new whenever I listen. So,
here's the cool thing though. Like, you got you have the Power Podcast, and it's become such a great way to do relationships with people within the industry. Like, it's a relationship builder. But here's the thing that I talk about with job seekers. Man, if you're just applying, so is it 1,000 other people. Absolutely. If you're just sending your resume to a manager or to a recruiter, please review my resume, so is 1,000 other people.
That's but what Yep.
But if you're kicking up a conversation, you see somebody that you respect in industry at a place that you want to work, you don't just hey, here's my resume, I'm looking for a job. Like ask them a curiosity question. Like, hey, I love everything that you've done. Like, I see that you went from here to here and you made this jump. Like, can you explain how you were able to make that career move?
Yes.
And you start the relationship, get that conversation going. Hey, and then after that, it's having a recruiting podcast. Like, hey, we need help with some openings. Cool. If not, cool. Hey, I see that you have an opening over with XYZ company. I think I have everything that it matches. It's the XYZ. Like, I have the experience that I could bring to the table. Like, love to chat with the hiring manager for that. Or right. If you're the hiring manager, love to chat with you. Like, you got to play the game completely different than everybody out there job seeking, because it's 2024.
Absolutely. And your points are what I echo. So I could not agree any freaking further. I call it relationship building over transaction. So relational or transactional. Hey, I'm looking for a job. Will you help me? That's a transaction. That's akin to spraying and praying resumes across the board. Like, it's not going to yield the results that you think it will, especially during this day and age when everybody's looking to be, to stick out and fighting for the roles. Like, that's just not going to cut it these days. And that's, build the relationships.
It's a piece of advice. And I know it's advice that kind of shoots you as a foot as a recruiter, but it's a piece of advice that builds a great relationship. Like, if I'm a data scientist in the DC Metro, I have a security clearance, and we're looking at working in the DC Metro and continue within that world of data science, I am going to literally friend request every single data science manager in a government contracting space that there is. There's, I think, something we'll just pretend that there's 250. I'm going to friend request all 250 of those, send them a nice personalized note, not because I'm looking for a job right now, which if I am, yes.
Right.
But these are the people that are going to be hiring me or my peers for the next 20 years.
Absolutely.
And, maybe not in the power space, LinkedIn is as popular, but at least in other spaces, especially if you're a former military, depending on your skill set, LinkedIn is such a powerful community builder. You have to start building your community now of the peers that you want to work with and the people that you want to work for.
I couldn't agree with you more. And like you said, the best time to do it is not when you're in that need of a job. The best time to do it's a year or two out, or start building now. Build that relationship. And I know we mentioned and talked about VAs. We're working with Octotasker, which you had Dan Jones on your podcast. I'm hiring a VA, and there's going to be a sourcing methodology there. but literally what I'm using that individual for is to be an appointment setter so I can work on building the actual relationships with both candidates and just everybody. Not for the sake of needing something right now, but just because I realize the importance of relationships. It's just that vital, and being able to have those, just conversations. So if we're doing it as business owners, you should be doing that as a candidate as well. It makes sense. It's literally who you know. And I mean, what you know is important, but who you know is so critical.
Even when it comes, if you're looking for a federal job as a govy, like, my God, like USA Jobs is the biggest black hole out there. Like, don't just apply to a job and think a job on USA Jobs and think that you're magically going to get it. Guess what? There's 1,000 other applicants, and they're probably going to hire somebody that they know. I see it time and time again. So even on the government side, it's about the relationships. I can't tell you how many times I see an opening and it's like, oh, Joe Bob got hired. Joe Bob knows, like, John Smith. What was the point of the other 500 people that just applied thinking that they were going to get it?
Just to meet the requirements. That's really what it comes down to, because they're required to, offer the proposals and the RFIs and then throw it up as a role. But we see it all the time. Guys that get out, ex-skippers and XOs and everybody else. Yep, got it. You got to wait the grace period. I believe, I think it was 6 months, maybe a year or something like that. But boom, they're in there right after that, and they just continue to foster those relationships.
I'll use my dad as a perfect example. Like, luckily, like, he got let go from a large government contractor, and I did work for that one later on. Like, he got a job at Walter Reed, actually doing career coaching. Like,
that's awesome.
Bubblehead, working on a Bubblehead contract, your submariner contract, and then doing career coaching. But because he was already a government employee, the second there was a position that was opened back up with that group that he used to work for as a government contractor, he was able to just slide right in. But if he wasn't already a government employee, he'd probably just still be twiddling his thumbs. I mean, he'd be working for another government contractor, but like, I don't know the secrets to being a government employee. Like, that's a whole nother podcast for another day. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is, even if for the Fed jobs, relationships matter.
Absolutely. And I think that just highlights it writ large. Like, it is that important. And it sounds like you coach your candidates and anybody I talk to. And like I said, a lot of it that we're doing is pro bono. I may not have a role for you, but this is what you need to be working on now. And the sooner you reach out, let's have a chat, get you moving in that right direction, and kind of work on building those freaking relationships. Like, they're just that vitally important. Now, we oftentimes run across resumes with graphics and photos and information that can be a bit confusing to read through, or at least I see it all the dang time. I always recommend the simplicity and readability with bullet points. Do you have any insights there?
Graphic resumes suck. If you're like, if you
don't like the big bold initial up top, or really just holding yourself with a profile picture.
I mean, are you a graphic artist? Is that your job? If not, like, get rid of all that crap.
That's exactly what I say. Yep, I agree with you.
Well, here's another thing. Like, there's some ATS systems that are great. There's some ATS systems that just eat your resume, and it looks like absolute shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, 100%. Literally, like, some of these graphic resumes, the second they go into an ATS, they just turn into mumbo jumbo. Like, literally,
absolutely.
Just like Yinglings or whatever the font is. That's what it looks like. And a recruiter's just going to go like, next.
Okay, don't have anything for you. Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Next, not hired.
And a lot of people don't realize it does actually parse to populate within the ATS. And that's kind of a lot of, especially the larger orgs. Like, we're still, I'm small enough, and care or want to have those touch points. So if you send it over, I'll see the graphical, but I'm usually going to recommend that you rewrite it for that exact reason. And it's just a readability thing. I don't care about your graphic arts, minor and you putting that to use or whatever. Readability is all we care about. Would you concur with that?
Readability and me being able to read actually what you've done. Not just like, I was in charge of 7 people on a team. I don't give a crap about that. Like, what did you talk about? Like, give me numbers. Like, okay, like 7 people that handled like 17,000 items over the last year, or 17,000 incidents in the power industry. I need to see actual data behind the crap that most people have. Like, great communication. Cool.
Okay. How?
You're not communicating that really well on a resume.
No.
I'm going to get kicked off this podcast.
No, you're not. No, these are all super relevant things. And like I said, it's great because like you've got experience. You've been in the internal bubble. You've been the agency bubble. You see it, and so this is one of those things. I just don't have the depth and breadth of wisdom that someone such as yourself will bring to the table. Like
Oh,
I said,
shut
we're
up. Yes,
only
you
a
do.
couple years into this thing. You know what I mean? But what you're seeing is like I just see it all the time. You know what I mean? And it's like okay, like well, and of course learning it, but
And there's a plenty of like recruiters that are very like prim and proper about how they do things, and their advice is like, please follow this like system. It'll be like you'll be perfect. I, that just isn't me. Like, let's just get the job done.
right.
Like, let's get you the job. Like, if you really want like the spend time on how to write a cover letter, I'm not the recruiter for you. Like,
No, and I'm with you on that, dude. I'm the anti-cover letter guy, so
and there's a hiring team that I work with, occasionally that love cover letters, and I'm like, I hope you like every time I send one, like they're like, we want a cover letter. I'm like, I hope you write a cover letter back when you turn them down.
right. Why add the additional steps that are just totally superfluous? It just doesn't.
It's also a team that's like very closer to the government, so they think like the government, and that's a whole nother story.
The red tape bureaucracy that comes along with those massive moneyless or bottomless money pits.
There's people that love bureaucracy.
No, dude,
and
I know.
You're going to run across them in your career, and you got to kind of like play to their level of loving bureaucracy. I just bumped heads constantly, and then I'm on to the next one.
No, I'm with you on that one. Couldn't agree more. That's why I like having you on here, so we can just kind of give them all the brunt honesty.
I mean, things are different now. Like things are different now, but you're gonna love this story. So this is a large government contractor. Like this is like technology is a little bit different. This is like earlier in my career. I, as a recruiter, plus all the jobs that I had, I started calculating I was averaging 25 to 30 hours of meetings per week. So like if you're dealing with an internal recruiter, they're stuck in a lot of meetings, especially in the GovCon space, because you're talking about programs and winning work and RFPs and this stuff. So I was averaging 25 to 30 hours of meetings per week, outside the 60, 70 positions that I typically had on a weekly basis. 500,000 applications, this and that. Trust me, like constantly drowning. That's what most internal recruiters are. They're on the edge of drowning constantly.
Absolutely.
They're not given the money. They're not given the time. They're stuck in meetings. So I know everybody's been talking about candidate experience, and you want to give a candidate the best candidate experience, but most companies are not set up, and it's not the recruiter's fault.
No, 100%. And would agree all day.
Anyways, back to the story. So, the manager, in one of her things that she ended up getting a bonus for, and I did all the work. She wanted to map out the entire hiring process. We mapped it out, and we found ways to cut it down. We cut it down to 85 touch points per hire.
That still seems excessive, or no?
Oh, it's stupid. It's beyond stupid.
Like I said, never done internal other than Navy, and that's a big old bureaucratic machine in and of itself.
So. That team loved like to get an offer out. You're gonna love this. To get it, like I said, things have changed. I'm sure those people are gone. Things have improved. To get an offer out, we print out the application. We'd walk into a conference room, and then we'd sit down, and like on the big screen, the recruiting manager would actually pull up the application and go through it line by line.
Wow.
And if you had 6.5 years of the 7 years required on the application, you had to go back to the candidate, and he would actually stamp it, denied, rejected. Like literally, like in the folder on the piece of paper, stamp it, denied or rejected. And then like if it passed, it was like approved. And then that person, like the recruiting coordinator, would take that back to their desk, put it away in the file, and then work on getting the offer. But if it like you missed a line, or it was like 7.95 years and it wasn't, or 6.95 years, it wasn't the full 7, go back to the candidate, please update. And then the next day you'd have to sit in the room waiting for the approval, so that way the candidate could get the offer letter.
Yeah, and I think that's where you're seeing a lack of trust and confidence and autonomy, right? Like it's like, okay, this must be done like this, and like I don't know, man. It just seems it just, like you said, just bureaucracy is really what it comes down to. 85 touch points. Like
maybe I think we got it down even more, but yeah, I remember like we sat there for like 2 weeks, like mapping everything out, and I'm like, of course they're like, well, you still have to do your recruiting job, and I'm like, can I just go back to recruiting? Like, I get it, you guys want to like make this magical thing better, but like, at the end of the day, like from my understanding, the manager got a bonus and got like huge high fives from the rest of the organization. Like there was a few of us that were just like, huh.
I don't know. Like I said, just coming, having lived a life of death by PowerPoint and meeting after meeting, and especially once you get up to like, for your enlisted folks, your technicians that go out and actually do the major moving parts, pieces, impact, maintenance, and all that, and aren't required as much. And so I did that from E1 to E6. I was like, okay, I got all this technical stuff.
Wait,
Then
you had to work.
Yeah, actual work, like real work. Yeah,
my understanding,
not
my dad did was drink coffee. That was my understanding what he did.
So,
like
he was a
drank
coffee. Well, and that was the thing is like, and a lot of people just discount it.
He was enlisted. He got up to the chief. Like
once you
E7
get
was
chief, like you, that's where you have to hit that crossover point and go hang out in the meetings with the rest of us. You know, it's one of those things. It's just
man. One quick Navy story, real quick. I don't know if they still do the things called Tiger cruises.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like I'd get a chance to go on a submarine for the weekend.
Right.
So like one of the coolest things was like the emergency dives. So, up and down, up and down. So they would have me like sliding through the missile rooms, like full speed on like the dives. Like, when they're going up and down, is one of the times I hit the wall so hard, I kind of like flew up, and right to my right was like this giant like bolt that I just missed by like literally like an inch, and everybody freaked out after that. But I was just like, hey guys, that was fun. It's literally like this like giant like screw bolt. I would have been impaled in the middle of the ocean.
And the skippers are like, oh crap, that would have been a serious sit rep to have to ride up to freaking major command. So yeah, that wouldn't have been good. No, but no, man, on that bureaucracy front, like that is what we did. And I don't want it. I don't want that. I don't ever want that,
And the moral of the story, if you're dealing with an internal recruiter at a very large company, just be nice. They're trying to give the best candidate experience that they possibly can. They're just like, we have a few 100 pounds of burdens that they have to deal with when they really, at the end of the day, want to spend time getting the right people to the right program to make a difference for the mission that they're working on.
Absolutely. How long do you think an average recruiter takes, an internal recruiter that is not agency, because we obviously do things a little bit differently. How long does an average internal recruiter typically look at a resume?
6 seconds.
6? I was giving a lot of grace at like 30 to a minute, huh?
There are some people that love like going line by line, and it's one of those things like, give me enough information on the resume for me to spend more time.
Mm-hmm. Are there any things that kind of caught your eye as an internal recruiter that would drive you to pay them a little bit more attention? Like, what would make Ben Mena want to look deeper into a resume?
The additional like data points, like, rather than like, hey, I led a team, like, hey, I led a team doing XYZ. We had a 20% growth. We increased revenue from XYZ. I've worked on 17 different projects. I supported 17 different power grids. We had a 99% uptime ratio for those power grids. Like, you've got to be a little more clear with the data.
Throw the data points in there to really amplify what your abilities are and how you can have an impact in an organization, basically.
And like, make sure like you're applying for positions that you match. There are so many recruiters nowadays, probably with also the even before AI applications coming through, which that's a whole nother story in itself. But like there's a lot of people that are like, hey, this is my dream opportunity, I'm going to apply. And I get it. Like, you're told to swing for it.
Go for the fences.
Swing for the fence. But at the end of the day, like, if there's 17 other people that actually match the qualifications, your swinging for the fence isn't going to be seen. And that's why I always talk about building relationships outside of the application system.
Yes. Because
that's where I see the person that's swinging for the fence hit some more runs that compared to just, hey, I put in applications, and the job hunt today is no longer just applications. It is, you have to do something different.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with that more. And then the other thing I like to highlight when I'm talking, especially like transitioning veterans and everything, like if you're reaching out to those HR managers, you're reaching out to the wrong people. They oftentimes don't understand the technical abilities that you have, just because that's not their wheelhouse. They don't, they're not electrical engineers by and large. That's just not going to happen. So
HR people are putting out HR fires. They don't have time for to send it.
They don't have time for continuous learning and learning about, current transformers and all the protective relays and all that. Not applicable to what they do every day. They may have a broad scope sense, but like, you're not going to, that's just not going to get you there, in my humble opinion.
I mean, most of the time, like I tell people, like, if you're in the industry, don't even reach out to recruiters. Like, kind of like,
Yes.
I hate to say this, like, we're recruiters and this is like how we work, but like at the end of the day, you want to skip the recruiter. Like, who the hell's going to hire you?
Right.
Like, who has the opening? That's the person that you need to be talking to.
Exactly.
Like, stop trying to find out which recruiter at this large government agency, a government organization, a large government contractor that has 250 recruiters all working on completely separate things that don't have a clue what the other person's doing other than
absolutely.
Okay, I see that number. That's the position you applied for. I've never met that recruiter, but they're on the other side of the country. Let me just hit send and they go. And that's about it. Like,
yep. If they're willing to do you something, you know what I mean? Because a lot won't even do that because you just simply don't have the bandwidth, I think,
Like, trust me, recruiters, like internal recruiters, they want to give you a great candidate experience. They just, at the end of the day, they got to go like a proverbial gun to their head because they have so many other things that they need to do, especially in GovCon. Like, my God, when they drop a proposal on you at Friday night and you have to find like the people by Monday morning.
That's just a full blown fire you're trying to put out, and nothing else matters at that point.
You're gonna love this. There's a contractor, a contract specialist that now has a podcast, and had a conversation with him. And I'm the one that's been the benefit of the Friday night or the day before Christmas Eve, getting the proposal dropped on me. The guy actually said, it was like, oh yeah, we used to drop the proposals on like Christmas Eve because we thought you guys would just pick it up once the holiday's done. I'm like, no. I'm like little peon recruiter. I have to go like Christmas
Eve. You're on the hook
for
it now.
Yeah. They're like, we got to find these people by return of Christmas. So guess what you're doing on Christmas Day? Hey, Joe Bob, you interested in a new position? I know it is Christmas Day, but I have to find the right person.
Right. No, 100%. You mind telling me what that podcast is? I'm always looking. I need to foray a little bit deeper.
I got to find
All right, shoot it to me later. Yeah. I'll hit you up on the backside. Cause like I said, that's something like we've got the SDVOSB tag and all that, and we're in SAM.gov and all that, but like that is just this big mysterious box of complexity that I'm not ready to deal with yet. So kudos to you for dealing with that stuff as well.
We don't deal with that stuff. We come in behind the scenes. That's the way our business. We have decided to not be the government contractor. We help the government contractors win the work, find the people, that kind of stuff. Because, man, we just want to unplug sometimes and head over to France and drink some wine.
I love that. And y'all just went to France, what, a couple months ago, I think, if that?
A month ago, yeah. We took Gabe out, for his first international trip.
That is so awesome. And France is nice, man. I've been to a couple we've been to Thule-sur-Mer and a couple other places over there, and it's just beautiful, beautiful countryside.
As long as you get out of Paris and London, if you get out of Paris and London, like traveling in Europe is way cheaper than traveling in the United States.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more.
I see people going to like Disney, and I'm like, we just spent 2 weeks in France at a fraction of what you spent going to Disney.
Exactly. And it really is, like you said, if you get outside of those tourist trap areas, you don't want to necessarily go to Rome. Sure, make it a day trip or something like that. Go hang out down in Trieste on the coast. It's just absolutely phenomenal, amazing coffee shops and all that other good stuff. You don't have to go do all that stuff. You may throw it into the mix a little bit, but
man, like you're gonna love this. We were in Nice, France.
Love Nice.
Like, we were looking at doing a half marathon. I know we're really on a tangent now. And I was like, wait, the cost of like going to California for a destination half marathon it's now cheaper. Wait, we started running the cost. I'm like, it's cheaper to just go to France. So we found a race in Nice, France, and it was like November. So it's complete off season from like everything else, but still amazing weather. We found a place like right on the beach. Airbnbs over in Europe don't have all those additional cleaning fees and all the stuff that doubles, like triples the price. It was $180 a night for a place right on the beach with a rooftop deck. Awesome. Like it was bigger than the apartment that we had in Arlington for 7 years.
Yeah,
for like $180
that is
a night,
insane.
without the additional like cleaning fees and all that other crazy stuff that.
We just went to
Anyways,
Nashville and stayed at an Airbnb, and that's like, out on the outskirts, not in downtown Nashville. Like, we got a little place on some acreage out there. It was like $500 a night or something crazy. It's just insane. So to hear that you can get into it for like 180 to go to Nice and hang out on the
like
ocean,
a
bro.
gigantic place. It was huge.
Really? That is freaking amazing. Now you got me spun up and inspired to go spend some more time over there, because that's one of those, like I said, I've been to 49 countries now, I think, just through the Navy. And we want to travel, here in a couple of years. We got some kids. I know that's probably selfish. We don't want to travel with a family of 5, and we got some older ones that are getting out. And I want to be able to kind of show wife, the world and some of the places we've been. So I think that is phenomenal. It's good to know it's still at least within reason to do so.
Oh, it is. The problem is my wife's family is from Iowa. And there's times like, from the DC metro, like we now live in Richmond. We look at the cost of flying to Iowa and we're like, the flights to Paris are cheaper. Let's just buy those.
Do that. Heck, have them meet you over there and you can still save money,
Yeah, but yeah, I digress. Back to what we were talking about.
Yes. No, this is going to be a good one for us. Like, we're 45 minutes and we're still rocking and rolling. So I'm here for it. So everybody get ready for the 3-hour podcast with Mena. I'm here for it. Now, hey, social media has had a tremendous impact on our biz dev. I know you and I talked about it. This thing kind of grew organically with the videos and now the podcast and all those other things. Kind of, what do you think from, do you believe it serves candidates well to maybe highlight their technical prowess? I know there are certain technicians that are out there, they'll go out on site in a substation and show relay testing or working through some sort of troubleshooting steps. Do you think that's a benefit to those folks that are doing that and kind of making themselves stand out a little bit from a recruiter's perspective?
Absolutely. And like videos are hard for a recruiter to find because you can't really do a search term and pull that up. So like, but it's really good when it's like you actually get your community and find your community and you're showing off those things. And because of that, like, community is social media too. Whether it's like a Facebook group, a industry focused Facebook group, whether you're connected with 150 different people within the same skill set, showing that kind of stuff shows that you're an expert.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like people that come to me, even recruiters that are just like, hey, should I do social media? I'm like, you know what? There's probably nothing better. Like, see that recruiter that you respect, that you like look up to? Why do you respect him? Well, they've done this, this, and this. And I'm like, they're probably, you might be a better recruiter than them. The only difference between them is they've shared a little more content and now they're the perceived expert.
Concur. Couldn't agree more. And like I said, it was one of those, and I'm giving away a little bit of our playbook, and this is kind of the personal experience. But coming out of I learned a lot, went through professional selling skills with the Navy, and then of course had the operations experience of running the STEM recruitment efforts for officers for the Navy over a tri-state region. So that's all fine and good, but like, you get out and long story short, tried retirement, bought an airplane, put in a pool, did all this other crazy stuff. And like I said, we're not hurting. We live comfortably on my retirement and investments and things like that. But like, I got bored, and I had a buddy of mine that I'd met while in Houston, and he's like, hey, you should open your own recruitment agency. I'm like, Joey, I'm kind of risk averse. I don't know that I want to do that. Yada, yada, yada. And long story short, he convinced me to ask my wife. My wife's like, sure, get after it. And so we did, but and of course, like most recruiters, light industrial, right? Everybody's looking for material handlers and assemblers and forklift drivers and all that. And I did that, and it just wasn't something that drove me to want to stay in recruitment. It wasn't intellectually fulfilling to talk about how well you can assemble X, Y, and Z hubs and bearings and things like that. And was offered the opportunity to do some NETA recruitment through a split arrangement, and super thankful to Mike Sterich for that. He owned a big, you're probably familiar in the GovCon space with Orion International. They're one of these big recruitment houses. Mike was the CEO over there for a little while, and he's like, hey, we have these NETA roles. You want to give it a shot? And it was really, really freaking cool. I enjoyed having the conversations, like just really could click with these people, and talk capacitance and resistance and the various switchgear and relays. As nerdy as that may freaking sound. So that was kind of what got me into this electrical power space, surely by accident. I know that's one of the questions you ask is like, how did you end up in recruitment? And this is one of those, if you would have asked me when I got out if I would be a recruiter, would have said not a chance in 1,000 freaking years. Just wasn't in the cards. And so but by doing that, and slowly starting aligning and putting out the social media content, mainly because it was more, and I didn't, perhaps this is less than business prowess type standard here, right? But like just by having the interviews, because I wanted to learn more about the industry. But as a byproduct, now people start seeing your face constantly. And like I told you before we started recording, it's been responsible entirely for my biz dev pipeline. So I'm not cold calling the CEO of X, Y, and Z or the hiring managers and all that. It's been very fortuitous for us, of course, and I will never look to give horse in the mouth, but they're reaching out to us, and it's because they see us on a regular basis, and that's a byproduct. So yes, do you have to network? Do you have to do all those? Do you have to work on the small those relationships? Absolutely. But what about the next steps? Well, to me, it's now I can show the expertise, or in my case, interview others within the power industry that have the expertise, because I'm not an electrical engineer by any stretch of the imagination, though it fascinates me, and it really does. And just as a byproduct, it's like, holy crap, like I didn't have to go out and find work and be that sleazy sales guy that everybody equates it with. It's just putting it out there, and then everything kind of grew organically. So, and it sounds like your path has been fairly similar to that. Obviously, you rock and roll with social media content, you put it out there. And is that kind of been your experience as well?
Like it's really like, it's kind of fun. Like when we have like people that reach out to us, like, oh yeah, I've seen that you have a podcast. This, I'm like, they walk through this like rabbit hole of like information that you've produced. But here's the thing, like, I'm not a very good self promoter. Like I am horrible at self promotion. I know there's a lot of people out there that are, typically your average salesperson is always about me. Like, but here's the cool thing. If you're like sharing video of sharing things that you're excited about, or, showing off what you're doing, you're not truly like making this a me. You're just like, hey, I'm sharing the story.
Absolutely.
And like, accidentally doing that are starting to build yourself a career brand.
Right.
And like, if you hop on social media and you see Micah all day long because you're connected with Micah, and like here's the thing. LinkedIn says only 1% of the active user base on the platform is actually even posting.
Mm-hmm. I've seen that statistic, which was mind-boggling to me, and it is just, it seems like, and like I said, your passion shines through. I hear it, in your voice and your inflection and your tone when you're talking through it. I feel like I have that same excitement around power, you know what I mean? Which is, but it's not a self-promoting thing. It's literally spread the damn knowledge, let somebody learn something, let something happen. And it's almost like this series of karmatic instance where it's like, you put out all this cool stuff, and not you or I, we're just the random dudes that are laymen asking questions. You know what I mean? Like, hey, Mr. $1 Million Biller, like, how did you do this? How did you get here? I'm curious, I want to know. And it feels like that's kind of the way you approach it as well. And it's just, it just feels like it's organic, natural, and it's not self-promotion. It's literally putting out, see what sticks. And if it resonates with the right folks, they'll reach out to you, but it's not why we got into it, I guess, if that makes sense.
And here's the thing, like here's some advice that I took when I started the podcast I have, like, go do, and I don't recommend this, maybe like shorten it to 20, but I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go do 100 episodes. And if at the end of 100 episodes, I'm still the only listener, I think I'm going to call it a success because I learned something out of it.
Right. No, 100%. It is so amazing how awesome, how much stuff you just pick up just from listening and asking questions. Like like we're not full free form. Like I asked, like literally, so I'll reach out to a guest, and like yourself. And I was like, hey, I really want to share because it's genuinely exciting to me. Like, okay, now what would I want to ask Ben Mena if he were sitting in front of me, because that's the opportunity you have. And so now it's just like, I get to literally express my personal curiosity for what I want to pick your brains for, and that's about, for everybody that's looking to get into writing your own podcast, putting out your social media, doing interviews, come at it from that curiosity perspective. And the questions just flow easily because you have a genuine curiosity towards it,
And like the technology makes it easy. Like you could just like pop up like a Zoom, like, hey, let's do like a 20-minute chat on Zoom. I'd love to ask you some questions, and
absolutely
share pieces of that Zoom, like on social media. There's cool tools like Opus Pro and like all these other like AI tools that can like do some decent stuff that if you don't have the expertise in video, like I have zero expertise in video. I'm almost 150 episodes in. Like you can still like do stuff,
absolutely.
But there's like, utilize the technology, utilize your curiosity. And man, if you're like job hunting, man, it's like doing like hey, I'd love to pick your brain about something, and not just like hey, pick your brain, but because like, or pick a brain or grab coffee, but like make it like a genuine, like, hey, how'd you get to where you were going, or how'd you get to this? Like, use that kind of question instead of, I'd love to pick your brain.
Right. No, 100%. And then giving somebody the opportunity, like we have another one coming up as well with the CEO of a company. He started off as infantry in the Army. Like literally, E1 came in, worked up, joined, got a couple of years of civilian experience out in the industry, then joined a team, stayed there, and just recently got promoted to be the CEO. Like that to me is a life story worth sharing. Like, how you go from literally, being that grunt that's riding around in the tanks or boots on ground or doing whatever, and now you're the CEO of a publicly traded company. That to me is inspirational stuff. And why wouldn't you want to share those stories?
Oh, you share those stories, but like, man, like what kind of information that you can pick up for your own story?
Absolutely. Freaking-lutely. Well, and then it also all combines, right? So to me, it's all about the collective gaining of wisdom. Like that's what it is. It's not reading a book or whatever. It's these conversations. It's literally picking the brains of someone else. And I think it sticks and you retain it a lot more if it's through that conversation as well.
And if you don't want to like do video, if you don't want to do this, like talk about like what you learned, like just like, share it on a story. Like, hey, just, learn something about like XYZ power, or just like, hurricane knocked out the power grid. We found a quick way to get them up. Like, you can share the stories without actually being on video yourself. You can just write it up on like, X, Twitter, Threads, LinkedIn, like the places where you can slowly within a community start to get seen.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, like you said, because, and I've also seen a familiar stat. It was like less than 10% of people or something along those lines are willing to actually get up and publicly speak. Like that is just not something that most people are willing to do for whatever the reason may be. And this is another kind of variety of that, but and I kind of see it in the outreach that I've had with various folks. I'm like, hey, hop on. And they're like, I don't know if I want to be in front of the camera, and I don't, and all that. I'm like, it's just a conversation. You're not speaking to 1,000 people, but even then, they still are reluctant to do so. And so I found that to be an interesting, statistic as well from that aspect. And it's awesome that you highlight the fact that you don't have to even do the videos. You know what I mean? You can write written post and show expertise, or show a series of pictures where you're resolving an issue, and now building out a photo-based post where you're covering it, and kind of giving a summary. There's tons of way to get out there, even if you don't want to do what we're doing.
Just went through the recertification process for my certification, and here's some of the things that changed since the last time I got certified.
Boom. Absolutely. Boom. And there you go. And now you've given something to the community as well. And that's the other thing I like to point out in this stuff is, don't make it about you. You want to be giving and sharing knowledge. No, like if I wanted to be standing in front of a Lamborghini or something like that, I would leave that over on Instagram personally. Like that's just not what I'm about.
I mean, that's
like, I want to share and give back.
I joke around about my podcast. I'm like, I just try to ask some good questions and I shut up and get out of the way. Like
100%.
I know we're already talking about podcasts. I probably need to like jump off the podcast thing in a bit, but I think like there's some podcasts where I literally like percentage of the conversation wise, I'm about 10 to 12%.
Absolutely. And I need to do better about that myself, to be honest with you, because like I get excited. You know what I mean?
We're bantering.
Yeah, 100%. But and well, I would give you that because we both work in this space, and usually I do a lot less talking than I'm doing today because, like I said, it's colleagues in the same space, so I feel a bit more comfortable about sharing these experiences, I suppose. But so kind of get back to the question. So what culture and fit is, obviously it's a rage, right? Like everybody's like culture, fit, and if you have the requirements and things like that, what are some of the things, or if you share those kind of insights with candidates, how do you help them find where they would fit in?
I mean, so GovCon is a culture in itself. So there's a lot of times where I'm not like going into like, we're talking about the culture fit. Like if it's like a business, business executive or something of that nature, there's a lot more of a culture fit conversation. But if it's a more of a frontline government contract employee working on a government contract, the culture is already, the mission is the focus. Like you are there for a national security mission, most importantly. If you're working, if you have a high level security clearance and you don't care about the mission, trust me, you're about ready to get out of the industry and you're going to go work at Amazon, or you're going to go work at a tech company. So like, I don't have to worry about the culture fit as much as other people. So like, that's my caveat. But it all depends. If you're a job hunter and you have one offer, culture fit might not be that important. It might be like paying the bills. So like, having these culture fit conversations with people that have been unemployed for a while, like they hate to hear those. Like, oh, culture fit. But if you have like, a job already and you're like, want to find a place, find a company that you respect. The leader sets the tone for the rest of the organization. So if you start seeing stuff from that leader that like, I like that, most likely that's going to be the tone for the entire organization. And that might be the culture that you want. That's a good way. Probably one of the better ways to look for a culture fit. But it all depends on where you're at in your career, what you're dealing with on a financially, what you're dealing with on your own timelines is where I get in those culture fit conversations.
That makes sense. That does make a lot of sense. Because like you said, if you're in dire need of a job to pay the bills, and culture is probably the last thing you're worried about at that point. And we do see some of that, like when talking with transitioning veterans. Fortunately, I think the TAP class does do a good thing, at least about highlighting the need to start looking earlier rather than later. And if that's the only takeaway they get, that's a great takeaway to have. So you can kind of start doing that while you still can put food on the table and look at it from that aspect of things. But but it does definitely make sense from the GovCon perspective. Like it's not as big a concern because it's the national security missions and things like that are really there. And you're probably going to have some, it may be a shot in the dark in some instances, like because not all commands are created equally. You may have that, dictatorial hiring manager or frontline manager, and that's going to be a personality conflict or whatever. But I guess that kind of sorts itself out as you kind of join an organization from that particular aspect. So, but fair point on the culture fit from the GovCon. So that probably was a question that was not as relevant to your personal space. So, but again, I think you did highlight the aspects of culture fit where it may be more relevant from that aspect. Now,
you always got to do what's best for you.
Oh, absolutely. Now, is there an interview methodology that you found that serves candidates well, like preparing for an interview? I know we talked through brevity and flow and simplicity in resumes, but and kind of capturing everything. What about STAR method or anything like that? Do you have any recommendations from that front?
Let me Google what STAR method actually means. Almost 2 decades in recruiting. So there are a lot of people that talk about methodologies and like infrastructure of how you do these conversations and these interviews. Many of them are trying to sell you a course. There's so much information that you could probably get from Micah and listening to this podcast about. It will blow many of those courses away that you could probably save $2,500 on and keep for yourself. But some of the most important things is actually, like, trust me, the manager knows if you're interested in the job or not. Like how your energy is super important. If you're just kind of like the, yeah, yes. Okay, cool. But if they have somebody that's interviews next, it's like, oh yeah, no, cool. That's awesome. Like a little bit of like, it might not be your personality to be all that way, but like add a little more energy into like show that you want the position without saying that you want the position constantly. Also, like have some great questions.
Absolutely.
Like be prepared to have some questions.
Yes.
Like, I'm blown away by the amount of people that interview at somewhere that have 0 questions. But also, like when you get a question, and I'm sure this probably goes into the mythology of a star. Like don't just say like the answer. Give an example of what you've done, and don't try to also don't talk forever. Like have like kind of a cutoff. So I do the occasional interview coaching. I'm not the best person for it, and I truly admit that. But like one time, I interview coaching. I gave a question to somebody, and they just kept on talking. And I actually went and put my phone down, and went and made myself a cup of coffee. And I went and picked my phone back up, and they were still talking. And I said, like, stop. Did you know that I left? And they're like, no. And I'm like, right. Like, it's okay to like end your sentence and wait for the next conversation. So like, you don't want to sit there and talk forever, but you also don't want such a short answer. So like, have the answer and then have like what you've done, like a fact about that. Like, hey, what have you done when it comes to like, working on the IT systems? Well, I been working on the IT systems for the last 17 years. Some of the great things that I've done, like, because of the systems I was working on, we ended up having no downtime in the part of Afghanistan that we were working on.
Right.
And yes, it did require like some extra hours and some overnight shifts occasionally, but we had the no downtime. And, that was one of the highlights of my career.
Absolutely.
What I did,
Something that it's succinct. There's brevity. You show the impact of what you did. And like, I won't totally crap on the STAR method. And I know you and I had kind of talked through this a little bit before, but to me, it's like just a framework for the example: situation, task, action, result, right? Like, what was the situation? And you could apply that technically to what you just kind of talked through as an example. And the only reason I do kind of recommend that on occasion is it's just a framework, right? And it's so you don't start meandering down the pathway and making giving the recruiter time to go get a cup of coffee, right? Like, but and then to kind of have just think through those things, like you said, think through the ability of we're going to ask questions about what you've done in your past, like have those not pre-canned. You want it to be authentic. You want to have these conversations, but to at least have applied some brain bandwidth to understanding like that, how did you impact the organizations? And I think that's constructive feedback to be giving yourself to kind of be doing a self-evaluation regardless. And now just highlighting some of those. So, but I completely agree with you on the frameworks and all that.
and frameworks are important for a lot of people. So there are a lot of people that like, need the structure. So, and my life is chaos. Like,
same here, brother.
Productive chaos. So like, I'm not trying to like, poo-poo on the structure. It's important depending on how your personality is. But like, one of the biggest things that you need to do is practice. Like, you're doing an interview with a manager, go practice it the day beforehand. Grab somebody, grab a friend.
Yes.
Go hop into ChatGPT. I'm interviewing for this position. Copy the job description in there. Like, hit paste or copy paste, and then ask, like, give me 20 questions that might happen for this interview. And guess what? Try answering those in front of somebody.
Absolutely.
Like,
well, and you're going to get over the nerve aspect of it, right? Because and it seems like every time, and I'm very informal when I hop in a conversation with a candidate, right? It's very, relaxed.
It's a recruiter conversation. Like, it's like our job is to have a nice, like, as a recruiter, our job, like, if you're the candidate that we're looking for, to have a really good conversation where we understand everything. We see how you match the organization. Like, that's our job.
Yes.
But when you're interviewing with the manager is like, many times they're trying to like, they need to hit these interview questions. They need to show like why you're different. They need to do this. HR wants all the interviews to be the same. So it's a completely different conversation. So also don't be a little too casual during that.
Right.
But yeah, just be prepared. Ask some great questions. Show, like, energy wise, show that you want the opportunity, even if that's not your forte, because managers want to work with somebody that also wants to work with them.
Yes. You couldn't agree more. And you see it, I'm sure, like I see it, you'll have some, and like, I try not to discount, like, some people are just naturally going to be monotone in their delivery and everything else, but there are also bodily posture things you can kind of look at. And that's why I really prefer to get the video interview. Are you distracted? Are you paying attention to what we're talking about? Are you truly engaged? Are you curious? Do you want to learn more? Like, all those things. I mean, we're all wired that way pretty much as humans, right? Where to find that fit, that tribal, because I mean, a company is tribal if you think about it, like their own little tribes. Like, you're looking for people who want to be in your tribe. So are you interested in that and things like that? So couldn't agree more. And like I said, have a frame, not necessarily a framework, but at least a way of approaching it, a delivery, or having worked through some sort of process that makes sense and feels right for you, if that kind of makes sense from that aspect. And then just show a little bit of enthusiasm and curiosity, and that'll carry you a long way. And there's nothing more that'll kind of turn me off in a conversation, with that in mind. It's like, well, I just, you're looking, but you're not looking for the right reasons or whatever. And that's, and a lot of people don't realize this is what we do every day, all day. We talk to people, and have these conversations. Just through the reps and sets of doing so, you can start knocking off little cues that people give that really just show whether or not they're indifferent or they're interested or they're curious. Would you agree with that? Or that's my experience.
I mean, that's also the problem. Like sometimes when you're talking to like a recruiter asking for job advice, like we talk to so many people, we've seen so many resumes, that is just like, we just pick up on these little things. Mm-hmm. And also that's a whole nother story. I'm always confused when recruiters have major issues. Like I'm like, you're a recruiter, like you recruit yourself a job, but that's a whole nother, that's a story for another day.
That's like, pet peeve of mine, but I'll leave that bay as well.
I'm also about like, hey, let's like, you got to like put in some work, do this, show this, like build out a sourcing, like, but this is not a recruiting podcast. I digress.
Fair enough. And yeah, I'm with you. So we got to leave it at that. Now, resumes, length of resumes. What do you have as general recommendations and advice from that recruiter perspective for some of these guys that are getting out or have been in industry for say 10 years?
So if you've been told that one page is the secret, guess what? The person telling you really hasn't searched for a job since 1985. Absolutely. And the reason is that one page, if it was on the desk, you lose the second page. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't tell you like how many times back when like printing resumes and stuff like that, like, oh shit, I have like 75 different resumes on my desk. I don't know where that person's second page was.
Right.
So back then, that's the important thing. So if you're going to a job fair too, it might be important to actually like narrow it down and not give me a 26-page resume at a job fair, because I will lose the other 25 pages. That has happened multiple times. But if it's a digital file, like 2 pages is great, but you need to have on that first page every single reason for me to keep on looking at your resume. That's Absolutely. The most important thing than like how many pages you have.
No, and I agree with that. And to me, like a lot of it has to do with experience. Like, do you have a standardized, like you would say, hey, if you got maybe 2 years or 5 years of industry experience, like I usually say, even at 10 years, 3 pages is fine for my particular, but I don't make it a hard and fast rule. It's like, take as much space as you need to be succinct in covering the impacts you've had in an organization while making sure that you wholly present who you are. So, so I don't want to necessarily call it a standardized, like, hey, I would go no longer than or more than. And again, I think it also matters of whether or not you're working with an agency, Bubba, or an internal guy as well. For some of that as well.
I say on average, like 2 to 3 is good. The most important thing that I personally like, and this is just my coaching, I hate summaries with a passion. I don't give a crap what you want at the end of the day. Like, cool, you want to play around with butterflies. Awesome. Like cool, but don't put that on the resume. Like the summary is wasted space. What you want to do in the summary area is give me 3 career highlights and give me the data behind it. Give me a reason to keep on looking at your resume, why I would want to hire you, or why you can make an impact on my team. And you're showing that in those bullet points of the impact that you can make and the reason why that you can add value to that organization.
No, 100% couldn't agree more. Cause I'm with you. I was like, I still like a summary block. Like I don't mind it, but you hit the nail on the head with that. Is like, show me a summary of the impacts you can have in a couple of sentences and then make that your summary, what impacts you can deliver. And I am one of those, I still like an objective statement. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, hey, looking for it. Well, and I go back and forth on that one. Cause I mean, obviously you're applying for a testing technician role. That's probably your objective, is to get a job as a testing technician or whatever it may be.
So I call that like that kind of stuff, the intro email that you send to the manager with your resume. So you don't need to recap it again on your resume. But that's just me.
Fair enough. Fair. No, and it can go either way. And like I said, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. You know?
Yeah. Every recruiter that you talk to and every career coach is going to have a different way that you should have your resume. So like, don't like whatever I'm saying. Guess what? You can just throw my thoughts in the garbage, because somebody else is going to have the secret. Just make sure that they're not trying to sell you a $2,500 course to sell you the secret on the proper resume that's going to get you through an applicant tracking system.
Yep.
Just talk to Micah. It's free.
And then here's my question. Like, so, and this is one, and I'm not beating up on resume writers and all that. I think at the executive level, there's probably going to be people out there that just don't have the bandwidth, or they want another set of eyes. But
if you don't have the bandwidth, get a resume writer. If you need help with a federal resume, get a resume writer.
Yep.
Outside that, like literally like Teal and Earn Better can help you write some really good, Teal HQ and Earn Better, their websites can help you use AI to write some great resumes.
No, absolutely. And then like from an agency owner perspective, like I'm also going to offer you tips and insights. I won't rewrite it for you, but like, why are you going to go out and pay somebody $500 to do that whenever you work with an agency guy? I can be like, hey, I gave it a good deep review. Here's what I need. Here's what needs to be corrected. I'm not necessarily going to rewrite it for you, but I'll give you some formatting tips, some content tips, things like that. And then I'll kick it back to you to make you do some work, because I expect some level of buy-in as well if we're going to go through this the way, because how many times, and I'm sure you relate to this, how many times you get somebody to an offer and then it's on to the next steps, and it was just either a lack of communication, loyalty here, or I misread an individual perhaps, or something like that. But ultimately, a lot of it came down to where I was doing the rewrites, I was doing all the legwork. I didn't make them kind of get in and get the buy-in from them basically, and have them do some of the legwork as well. And that was one of those things I learned early on, where I was spending hours upon hours doing resume rewrites for people. They're like, hey, thanks for the updated resume. Now I can go out and use it, at X, Y, and Z. And it happens. So like at that, it's like, that's one of those to get a little bit more buy-in. So recruiters that are out there, give feedback, in my humble opinion, but don't do the rewrites. It's just going to end up biting you in the ass, basically.
The only time I do some rewrites is when it comes to if a client that we have needs it for a government like function, because sometimes the end government person core likes resumes in a certain little box or things broken down, but that's like the occasion. That's like not the standard.
Right. No, couldn't agree more. And I think that's a great way to look at it as well. Now, in your opinion, in my opinion, at least, we'll start with my opinion, Vice Ben's this time. But so I see LinkedIn as kind of being the de facto professional network. Do you have any other recommendations or places for job seekers to perhaps find outside, or opportunities outside of the traditional job boards such as Dice, Indeed, or ZipRecruiter? Are there other tools out there, perhaps AI related, that candidates maybe perhaps haven't thought about that they could implement in their job search?
So my two favorite AI tools is Teal, and it's tealhq.com. It's actually a tracker for your job search. And here's one of the reasons why I believe that's important, because so many times people are like, I'm job hunting. I'm so busy job hunting. And I sit down with them and they're like, oh, I've been looking for a job for the last year. It's been so hard and so stressful. All right, how many applications? Well, a lot. I've done tons. And then I'm like, show me your email. All right, type in like this and this into your inbox.
Resume or whatever it may be in your inbox.
Oh,
right.
You've only done 49 applications over the last 365 days, but you've been thinking about how hard you have been. Teal HQ is a great way, and it helps you rewrite your resume, all this other stuff, but keep track of what you're actually doing and where you're applying, this kind of stuff. It's a really great tracker. And Earn Better kind of actually helps you, helps you apply to different positions using AI to kind of semi-rewrite to help you, not completely do everything you haven't done. So those are the two websites that I truly love right at the moment.
So Teal and Earn Better, those are the two.
Tealhq.com and Earn Better. But when it comes to the different job boards, put your resume on every job board. I know there's recruiters that say that, don't do that. Only put it on this one because you're going to start getting hit. But think about this. Job boards cost recruiters a shit ton of money. A shit ton of money. So because it costs a shit ton of money, recruiters aren't buying every single job board. There are so many different job boards right now. Back when I was an internal recruiter, the amount of job boards I had at one of my positions equated to $37,000 per year.
Yes.
Not everybody has a $37,000 a year budget for job boards because they're paying for the recruiter, and the recruiter's job is to go find people. So, picture this. Clearance jobs, one of the best job boards in the GovCon space. If you have a security clearance, go put your resume out there. It is one of the best ones. So if you have a security clearance and you're job hunting and your resume is not on clearance jobs, you're wasting your time.
I love it.
But it costs a recruiter about $11,000, $12,000 per year per seat for only to view 500 resumes a month. So if you're actually also looking for something, make sure your resume is updated every few weeks. If you're active in the job hunt, because if I start searching for, software developers with a secret clearance, okay, cool. I have 750. A recruiter's probably not going to look at the bottom 750th one. They're going to plug in some more things and make it a little more narrow, but they're going to be looking at the most recent resume on that job board, because every single job board, you only have so many views per month. And if you have Indeed, you have 100, maybe 100 or 200. Once you're out of those 100, Guess
That's
what?
it.
You can't do nothing. You can't look at resumes for the rest of the month. A recruiter can blow through those in one day in a search. And so that the rest of the month, they're not going to be looking at you if you're on Indeed or ZipRecruiter or all that because they've ran out of searches or
Yes.
maybe it wasn't in their budget. So I know it's against popular opinion. I try to say, like, make sure your resume is updated on multiple job boards and make sure that it's updated on all those job boards every 2 weeks if you are actively in the job hunt.
No, couldn't agree more. And I'm proof proof positive of that as well. So I use Indeed. And again, they are expensive, all of them across the board, especially once you start hosting jobs over there. That's when it just gets untenable. But like, a lot of the sourcing we do is over on Indeed. And one of the first things I do, because I know I'm limited to X amount of capacity, I'll set it to update it in the last 30 days. So a little bit more leeway than the 2 weeks. But if you haven't updated in 90 days, then, typically if you're in a field like power, then you're probably already hired away, and then I even know some people that are actively employed, happy where they're at. They still take the time to go in and update it at least once a month just to have that, have the opportunities and have people reaching out to them just in a passive manner. But you couldn't agree with you more. And like I said, just from my personal experience, LinkedIn and Indeed are my two. I tried Monster, tried ZipRecruiter, and I know people that love and swear by them, and Dice for some things. But like, I just don't have the bandwidth nor the budget to be on all of them and trying to do that, or we wouldn't be in business, I don't think. So
what you'll typically hear from a recruiter is if that has never had to pay for a job board or has never had to be part of the budget discussions for a job board. Oh, only use 1 or 2 job boards. When it's a recruiter that's like, hey, they've been part of the budget discussions at an internal company where it's like, we only have, $300,000 to pay for job boards for 75 recruiters. You get one of those, you get one of those,
Yep.
you get one of those. But like I said, it's not popular advice, but I know not every recruiter has access to every job board. So if you're only on one job board, guess what? Only the recruiters that are paying for that one are going to see your resume.
And I think that's the most salient takeaway of the whole thing. If you can be everywhere and be over there, because you and I lived that experience. I can't afford to be on all the damn job boards. That's just what it is. So I go to the ones that I know where I've had the most propensity to have success. And that's where I'm at. But now you're only getting seen by me. You're not getting seen by the other, 20 agencies that are out there that represent the industry. And like just bouncing back and forth from the different ones. If you want to be seen by everyone to up your opportunities to have outreach inbound to you, then be on all of them. It just makes sense to me.
Oh, my only caveat though is if you focus on artificial intelligence and you have a security clearance, don't go to any job board. Only come to me. Just kidding.
Plug for Ben. Fair enough. And I'm gonna and I know that was a joke, obviously, but literally, it's like that is what you need to do if you want to get more Bens and Micahs out there, that are there. We're not everywhere, and we're not as omnipresent as we would probably like to be, right?
There's only 24 hours in the day. I remember when I was a little kid, or I think it was back in college. I was like, if God could grant me one wish, it'd be 40 hours in a day.
Yes.
He hasn't done that. We're still stuck at 24. So. Man, we've really
imagine how much we could actually get done. I think I need me one of those Musk Neuralink things, that way I can just plug directly into the matrix and call it good. Now, having a vast array of experience in the GovCon space and with a large part of our audience obviously coming from a military background, do you have any recommendations for folks looking to move from the military into the military industrial the military industrial complex, be it with like a BAE or a Lockheed Martin, or any best practices?
I mean, it's like, if you're trying to figure out who the recruiter is at those large companies, you're never going to hit the right recruiter. So don't go trying to find a recruiter that can really that recruiter most likely 99% of the time won't be in charge of the opening that you have. It's weird. It does happen. But most time it's not. So what I would do is whoever that manager is at the position that you're going to be working for, whether we'll just say a field engineer. If you're a field engineer and you want a field engineering job at BAE or Lockheed Martin, I would go try to figure out every single field engineering manager or director and start friending them on LinkedIn. They're not active on LinkedIn. They might be active once every 2 weeks. So make sure to add a personalized note. Hey, field engineer, love to connect, growing my network within our space. I love what you've done with your career. even ask the question, like, how did you get to the leadership level at Lockheed Martin? You have 300 characters that you can use in a LinkedIn. When you go add a connection, add a note, you have 300 characters that you can use to make a difference. So that's what I would personally do. Like, I would spend your time really just trying to chase down the people that would actually have the opening, actually have the decisions that need to be made. Because guess what? Most of the time with those large companies, they are flooded with applications. They are flooded with resumes. And really, it's the first 3 to 5 people that get seen that meet all the quals are the ones that actually are the ones going to the hiring manager. It's not the other sometimes 75 people that also meet the quals. They're not like, many managers don't want to see the other 75 people. They only want to see like your top 3 to 5.
Right.
So if you have also applied too late for that position, you're sitting around. And there are companies that like want like go and want to touch every single person and want to have a conversation with every single person. And trust me, some of those like organizations that we're talking about will say that. But I've seen behind the scenes at those places, and unless they've decided to triple their recruiter base, not every single person's getting touched.
Absolutely. No, couldn't agree more.
Not the recruiter's fault. I want to reiterate that again. Like, many of them have like 60 positions, 500 applications per position. They're dealing with 30 different managers on top of that, working proposals, and would like to spend time with their family too.
Yeah, absolutely. And not a lot of time with their family is what I'm coming to experience anyway. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. And couldn't agree with you more. And I'm very much aligned with your thoughts on it. What I typically recommend is even one step digging down beyond the manager and trying to find people that are actually field engineers within that organization, because I don't discount the internal referral. You know what I mean?
They get referral bonuses.
Yes. and that gives them a reason. And the same thing is relational vice transactional. Be relationship. Build it like you're trying to build a friendship. You know what I mean? And the thing is, it's not just for the instantaneous, now I need a job. It's for the macro. Why not be connected with everybody you freaking can in your industry? Pick brains. Dedicate an hour or two, even if you're if you're a full-time employee somewhere, have conversations. It doesn't take you that long. It may take you a couple of years to work through your network, but work through your network, build that relationship, become aware of the industry.
You don't want to do it. And I get it. I don't want to do it either.
Me neither.
But your career might need it in a year or two when that contract runs out of funding, or the government decides like, hey, we're going to switch gears. And all of a sudden your organization that you're working with is just like, well, crap, this was supposed to be a 9-year program funded by the government. It is now a 5-year program funded by the government. And everybody's going to be laid off in about 1 month. That happens constantly in the space. So when people talk about security and GovCon, there's security in GovCon because the government always typically spends, and they typically always pay their bills.
Right.
But the way that government contracting constantly moves around, it's always a moving needle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, contracts are 5 years. Some of the agencies are 3 years. Some of the agencies are 9 years. Some of the big stuff with the Pentagon is 10 years. But every 5 years, things are coming up typically for rebid. And most often, the company that wins is also the lowest cost provider.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to prepare your career to make some moves, even if you want to be sitting in the same seat like every year. Because guess what? The contracts are going to change with or without you in GovCon.
No, and I totally align with that. And like you said, and the more it's just like being on every freaking job board that you can possibly be. Open up, have those relationships. Like they will like, and it's not like you're doing it for malicious purposes or setting yourself up to, just be there to capitalize on these relationships. Like, it's just good to have them. You're going to learn more about the industry as well, the happenings going on and all that. And being, I think, intentional too in your networking is also pretty important. Like for me, I fell victim. I had 5,000 or 6,000 connections on LinkedIn, and it was people outside of the wheelhouse that were irrelevant, to what we're doing. And, I just accepted any connection request that came in because I'm like, oh, look at me. It's a vanity metric. Let's rock and roll with it, and had to make the intentional decision to kind of use it more as a tool and make it really focused towards our industry and the industry that we planted our flag in is Empower. And so by tailoring that network to those particular people, you're just exposed to everyone else's content, even with the 1% that's putting it out there. But somebody's putting out something, and there's always a white paper. There's always a demonstration video, and then having those having those relationships and working and building that, you're only going to better yourself in the knowledge and wisdom that's required to be successful in your space. Would you agree with that? I know that was a long kind of diatribe, but
I've seen people that did something like this, commented on a post, it had a few comments, over a few months, but when an opening popped up, guess who got the job? There was a little bit of like, oh, I like this person. I see what they've been doing.
Absolutely. And again, shocking revelation here. It's relationships, man. That's all it is. Relationships and people.
You don't want it to be. You I get it. You want to be known for the work that you've done, the quality of the work that you do. But at the end of the day, I hate to say it, it is a relationship. Your career is a relationship game.
Absolutely. And I fell victim to that. I'm not going to lie to you. And this is kind of a little side story. So when I was climbing up the ranks as a fire controlman, had a roommate over in Japan. We rock and rolled. I kind of viewed him as a brown nose. So Chris, if you're out there, I apologize for letting the world know here. But we were roommates in Japan. We rock and rolled. We carried on. We did it. As a crank, I went and worked in the scullery, which is where we do the dishwashing and all that. And if you can't tell, I'm not exactly a polished individual in my delivery. So I'm trying to get better at relationships and all that. But it was all I want to be known for what I do. That's it. I don't need the relationships and all that. And then you look and I lost out in the promotion war with this particular individual, but he had gone and worked in the Chiefs mess and played the game well and all that other good stuff. So yeah, sure. I'm sure it didn't bother him to hear me call him a brown noser when the paycheck benefited him on the end. You know what I mean? So that was one of those. So I say all that to say it's not all necessarily based on your technical prowess, your abilities, your track record and all that. You still have to have somebody else out there that kind of understands that and have those relationships in place. And so that's Micah's little war story of, calling somebody a brown noser when I should have been doing the same damn thing.
And you don't have to be like a brown noser, but it's just you have to be out there and kind of a little more personable than you probably should be. Ask a few more questions, be a little more interested. And that has the impact.
Couldn't agree more, man. And like I said, very sage, very, very succinct version of what we just put out there. But brother, we're going on an hour and a half, right on the mark here. I knew it was going to be fantastic. You've been dropping knowledge bombs. And again, it's definitely outside of our normal realm of conversations that we have here with everything being centered around power. But to me, this is just very important, especially for the veteran community that's out there that also needs to kind of take some of this stuff into consideration. What are some final words of advice, thoughts for job seekers that are out there? Doesn't have to be power, just job seeker in general. I know that's been the overarching conversation we've had, but any final thoughts on that, that guy that's getting desperate, needs a job, getting, just completely frustrated with the process, not having any luck? What would you tell that individual?
Honestly, it's what I tell people constantly. Just keep on applying, but you can't just use the applications as the end all be all. Praying and spraying, as you said, or applying and praying. If it isn't working, you got to do something different. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over without actually getting any results. So start sending those personalized conversations. Start interacting with leaders. Whoever the leader, the manager level is of the place that you want to work, start friending every single one of them and asking them how they got to where they're at.
Love that.
And then after the conversation is going, hey, you have an opening. I'd love to be a person that can add value to your team.
Absolutely. And the other thing that kind of ties into that too is that's an internal spy. You actually get some keen insights into the culture just by talking to other people that are there. So that's the way I phrase it when given the advice is use them as your internal spy as well. If you want to play that whole Game of Thrones, bald whisperer guy, that's kind of playing all I can't remember what his name was. It's irrelevant, but anyway, that kind of thing. It's just an ability to learn even more about the role and figure out the likes and dislikes that you may have. So couldn't agree more. And again, I mentioned everyone from the get-go, dude. I have learned just a ton, and even outside of just the recruitment, you get a lot of folks who share these very personal stories of overcoming just monumental obstacles and leading to a career success, and those kind of things. So, can you kind of tell folks where they can find your podcast if they're interested in that kind of thing? Also, I know you're active on LinkedIn. Are you open to being connected with over there as well?
Yeah, I mean, send me a connection. Just make sure to add a note saying that you heard it, on Micah's podcast. Like,
Right.
add the note, because there's a lot of times like I get connection requests, and I'm really trying to like narrow mine down to the industry that I focus in. So I've actually been unloading, because I've been on LinkedIn. Like, I really haven't used LinkedIn until about 2023, but I've been on LinkedIn since 2004. So I literally have like 15,000 connections, and probably like 10,000 of those are from 2004 to 2010.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, send me a note if you send a connection and request on LinkedIn. Feel free to hit a follow. I kind of like just talk about random stuff in GovCon, constantly, and recruiting. But the Elite Recruiter podcast, you can find it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
I love it. And for anybody, even outside, like I said, outside of the recruitment industry, it's just, it's a really cool dynamic. I go out, I rock, anywhere between 2 and 4 miles a day. And like, I'll throw on the, your podcast, or, the Elite Recruiter, or Mark Whitby's podcast, or a Power podcast, or something like that. And, but truly enjoy the insights that you've given. It's been very, very beneficial. And from a personal perspective, I greatly appreciate all the mentorship and the conversations, and helping me walk through the minutia of getting set up with a podcast and all that other good stuff. And Ben is a real one, folks. So if you're in that GovCon space and you're looking for somebody who's truly passionate about what they do, just awesome content, and truly gives it from a place of generosity out of his heart as well. So love it, brother. And I appreciate you. Any last minute, by the ways?
Nope, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, we've been rocking and rolling, and we made it to 135. It's not a record, but we're getting close, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Thoroughly enjoyed the hell out of it, my friend. And until next time, everybody, Mike out.